Hey kids, put on your astronaut helmets today because we're going to be talking about the space war. As we all know, the space war was during the Cold War between the communist Russians and USA. Now, during this space war, it was basically a superhand fight between the Russians and USA, trying to find out who has the upper hand in space technology that wasn't really in contact with military technology at the time. So, before we get into a little bit about the space war, I want to know, what do you kids know about that?
Russia put the first satellite in space, and I think its name was Sputnik.
Right, but it's the communists again, so that really doesn't count. It was a 200 million pound thing that just beat in space. Like, what is it supposed to be? However, in 1958, U.S. put up Explorer 1 that actually scanned a lot of things, that actually collected data and brought it back to the U.S. to let us understand what the space was going on instead of just spinning. Like, who wants to just see a rotating ball? I know, I don't. So, besides that, do you guys know anything else about the space war?
Well, Russia had the first man in space. His name was Yuri Gagarin.
Yeah, you're right. Yu-Gi-Oh was the first person to be in space. But the Americans in 1961 sent the first chimpanzee into space in a successful test flight. His name was Ham the chimpanzee. Now, if I remember correctly, Ham was an American. And if I also remember correctly from my elementary school, we also know that chimpanzees are a lot smarter than the Soviets. So, well, let's stop talking about the Soviets for a moment and let's get back to the country that actually matters in this space war, America, okay? USA formed an organization called NASA in 1958 where they actually try to basically make all their efforts go towards just space technology and actually working and getting things a lot better than the Soviets have. And if I remember correctly, they have done just fine.
Wasn't NASA unsuccessful in its early years?
No! Sabotage.
Well, you gotta give it to the Russians. I mean, they did send the first rocket to the moon, and it had the USSR flag on it.
Let us be clear. The Russians just threw a rocket at the moon and decided to put a flag on it and crashed on there and said that it was ours. U.S. told them, and I mean repeatedly told them, that it was dumb, that you just can't throw a rocket on the moon, and just decided that it's yours. No, you can't do it that way. So, with that, U.S. took a lot of preparation, a lot of timing to actually put somebody on the moon. And with Kennedy winning the election in 1960, they actually decided that they were going to the moon before the decade ended. And Kennedy said, and I quote, "We're going to the moon in the end of the decade. And we chose to go to the end of the decade and do these things, not because they're easy, because we want to rub it in the Soviets' face and tell them we did it."
No.
Okay, all right. Let's forget about the Soviets for now. Let's talk about the Apollo 11. Yeah, let's start there. So, what was the Apollo 11 and what did it achieve?
It was a space rocket, and it brought the first man to the moon.
That's right, and the first man was
Neil Armstrong.
And the first man was
American.
That's right. Oh, I can remember it only yesterday. My grandfather sat me on his lap, told me in 1969, I took the first man onto the moon. It was so beautiful. It was the biggest rocket that any man has set and made. Oh God. Just get teary. And I can just remember he got up on the chair and said, "This is one step from man and one giant leap from mankind." Oh, God. And this was when U.S. won the space war. And this is when we knew that we were far more superior than the Russians would ever be. So beautiful.
I heard the moon landing was fake.